Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Response Able Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Do you find yourself locked in a daily power struggle with your child? Do you fall back into old patterns like yelling or threatening just to stop the annoying behavior? Are you desperate to learn how to connect with your kids, set boundaries, heck, gain some cooperation? If this is you, you need to check out my community. Inside my community, you'll have access to my signature Strong-Willed Language course, where you learn how to regulate yourself, understand and speak your strong-willed kids' language to virtually eliminate the constant power struggles. You'll have access to my workshop library, giving you step-by-step strategies for sibling rivalry, listening, anger and aggression, emotional regulation, and more. You'll have weekly Q&A opportunities to get personalized answers on challenging situations. You'll get specific strategies for you based on exactly what's going on in your home. No umbrella strategy, no umbrella script, no box. You'll get a personalized roadmap to support you. Plus, you'll get dozens of bite-sized lessons to regroup, stay on track, and stay motivated. It is time to stop walking on eggshells around your children and finally experience the relief you are looking for. Join the community today, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Responsible Parenting. I'm your host, Becky Jennings. And today I just wanted to, I felt very inspired to come and share about what happened last night in our household. Because sometimes I feel like there is this perception of a coach or this guru in parenting who never messes up, who never yells, who never has an issue. And that's just not reality because we are all humans and we have past programming that is very strong. And we have this like hairwire trigger to fall back into a default pattern. And sometimes we're like, how did that even happen? Like, I've done so much work. I can't believe that just happened. And I want to share realistically what happens when you do this work. I want to share realistically the impact of the effort, the impact of the work. I want to share what happened last night in our household, the messiness, and then the recovery. So here is what happened. My boys have had the flu for a very long time, feels like a bazillion years. And yesterday was like the very first day that my oldest, strong-willed ADHD child was back to his vibrant, normal self. And he was kind of on one, right? He was going through something, and I tried really hard for the bulk of the day to manage the outbursts. I tried to really stay grounded in myself while I was getting the want tornado where he was asking for multiple things in a row because he was so dysregulated. Can we watch a show? Can I have ice cream? Can we get a treat? Can we play a game? I mean, it was like, whoa. And that would just be in 30 seconds. So I had to slow us down. Is there one particular thing you'd like to prioritize? So I was, after about 4 hours, kind of at my breaking point. And we ended up all getting together and watching the final episode of Skeleton Crew. Our kids love Star Wars. And so we watched the final episode as a family. And it was about 7:15, 7:30, and it's time to go to bed. Meanwhile, we have had a afternoon filled with connection. So I do want to point out that sometimes, even when you've done all the steps, sometimes it doesn't go perfectly, which can derail us in the moment. So we had played Monopoly, we had cozied on the couch, we had read books, we had done a lot of things, right? It wasn't like I was too busy and I was neglecting or anything like that. So I just want to point out that sometimes you do all the things and sometimes it still doesn't go your way. So we said, okay, it's time to get ready for bed. And we got no, I'm not doing it, which was a little bit frustrating since we had accommodated so many things throughout the day. So I said, it is time to go to bed. We are still recovering from the flu. It's important to get rest. And while this was happening, somehow we were in the kitchen and he started to feel cornered. Now, I didn't clock this. I was looking at this as defiant, rude behavior. I went back into my default mode of, you cannot talk to us like that. And he tried to walk away. And I kind of stood in front of him and held this boundary to be like, no, we are talking about this. You're not allowed to speak to me that way. And it started to escalate fairly rapidly. And I think that shocked both of us because we've been in a really good rhythm for a really long time. And to kind of immediately be in this power struggle shocked us both. And he started screaming, let me out of the kitchen. Let me out of the kitchen. I can't do, I'm not going to. I mean, it was, and I started being like, whoa, what is this? And as opposed to getting curious, I got angry. And so I grabbed him by the arm and we walked sternly to the bathroom to brush his teeth. And he's in the bathroom and he's saying, I hate you. Get out of the bathroom. And I'm kind of trying to get down to his level, but still also being an authority figure. And I said, wow, you must be really angry with me to be speaking to me like that. Can you choose another way to speak to me? So I'm trying to use the skills, but I'm also really showing that I'm angry. And he's like, just leave. So then it goes to tears. So I stand by the door because I know he doesn't want me to leave, but I know he wants to feel in control. So I stand by the door and he is angrily brushing his teeth. And he's like, I don't want you in my bed tonight. I don't want you to say goodnight to me. And it's just escalating and escalating. And my husband, who's a couple steps behind me, maybe more than a couple steps behind me in the work, he immediately is like, you're just not allowed to talk to us like that. Like mom and I are going to have a conversation tonight and we're going to figure out what punishments, we're going to figure out what consequences. We're just, all of your favorite things are going to be gone. And it was such a defeating moment because we have really committed to working on the skills versus diving into punishments as a way to change behavior. Because I don't know about you, but I have never seen punishment change an ADHD child. I have never seen punishments change a strong-willed child. And I've been really, really committed to not threatening punishments in order to make myself feel better in the moment, in order to see the behavior change that I want to see. And so we both kind of felt really defeated. And it wasn't pretty. There was yelling. There were threats. There was the threat of figuring out the worst punishment that could ever happen because you're not allowed to talk to us that way. And he's in bed and we're saying goodnight. And I normally, my past me would be very angry and hold on to it for a very long time and dive into a lecture process that isn't going to be helping because now that I know, my son has a very limited window to actually pay attention and listen to me because now we know that he has ADHD. So my long lectures never were effective. It only made me feel better to purge out all my frustration and anger, but it never made the situation better. And if I asked him to repeat anything back, he didn't know what I had said because he tuned out. And so as we're getting ready, as we're going to bed, I was able to slow myself down. So this is part of the work in process, right? So realistically, this is what it looked like. I calmed myself down through using a grounding tool. I used breath and I went to my 5 senses safe place. And if you haven't listened to that episode, I'll link it below, but it's one of my favorite exercises and it's a 5 senses safe place. So I went to that place and I realized that what was happening was he was so dysregulated. He was in fight or flight, feeling trapped in the kitchen. Even though he wasn't trapped, he felt trapped. in the kitchen. He felt like he didn't have an escape plan. He felt like he couldn't get out. So he lashed out in any way that he could in order to get out of the kitchen. So I now know that he had a flight response. He had a flight response to leave the kitchen. And because I was trying to have a conversation with him in the kitchen, I was trying to keep him in the kitchen to get some sort of answer and resolution from him about how he spoke to me earlier. It wasn't working because we were at the height of the breakdown. We were at the height of the meltdown. So that's not going to be where we learn the lesson. That's not going to be where we get resolution. But past programming, past patterns, they took over in my body, and I kept us stuck at that place as opposed to remembering my skills and saying, why are we focused on teaching a lesson at the height of the moment? My primitive responses, my emotional center took over, and my logic brain, my communication brain, and my prefrontal cortex left the room. And so I relied on my bigness, my loudness, and my authority to jam the lesson. Did it work? Sure didn't. I'm just going to jump to the end. Sure didn't work in the moment. It just left us really disconnected. It left him sobbing and really scared. And so after I went to my 5 senses safe space, and I want to just share a timeline of this. This all happened within about 8 to 10 minutes. Now, that's a very stressful 8 to 10 minutes. But for me in the past, it used to last for hours. I used to hold on to this for days. And I wouldn't be able to recover, and I'd be working at a lower capacity for days because it would rock me so hard. I would feel so much shame and guilt for my response. I would feel so like I've lost all my skills and I have to go back to the drawing board and start all over because I clearly have no idea what I'm doing, as opposed to what happened last night, which is realistically how this work progresses, is I realized I had messed up and I was able to calm myself down. I was able to move myself back into my window of tolerance where my nervous system was regulated enough that I could approach the situation differently. So I climbed up to the top bunk and I said, I am sorry for my reaction. Your behavior, your emotions are never your fault. And it's never my reactions. It's never your fault. I am in charge of my emotions. I am in charge of the way that I react, and I didn't do it the best. And I am sorry. I am sorry that I let it take over. And he was able to say, I am sorry too. I felt trapped in the kitchen. So now I know that we're no longer at the height, that because I calmed myself down, he was able to see my calm, and he was able to know that it was safe to speak what happened for him. He said, I felt trapped in the kitchen. All I wanted to do was leave the kitchen, and you were blocking me. And so I screamed. So I yelled because I didn't know what else to do. And I was able to acknowledge that made sense to me. It makes sense that when you were having, your nervous system was all freaked out, it makes sense to me that you did what you thought you could do to regain a sense of safety and control. I said, that makes sense to me. And then I said this, it's not okay for your dad and I to expect that you perfectly manage your emotions when you just saw how Dad and I acted at 41 and 43. We couldn't manage our feelings and our emotions. So why is it fair for me to expect you at 7 years old to be able to perfectly execute the words, the script, the coping strategy? Especially, you're a child who's just figuring out your ADHD. You're a child who's just figuring out tools. So it's not fair for me to expect that from you. And it wasn't fair for us to launch into threats, punishments, and all that stuff. His chin was quivering. He started a tiny bit of crying, and he said, "Thank you. I was really scared to see what kind of punishment you would give me. I was just thinking over and over again about what it could be, and it was really scaring me." And he also said, "Could you please stop using that fake smile face?" I said, "What is the fake smile face?" He's like, "When you're angry, but you're trying to stay calm and you kind of smile through your teeth." He said, "That face scares me." And I know exactly what he's talking about, because when I'm really tense and I'm trying to stay calm and I grit my teeth and it's that moment. This is where I want to this is the work, right? Where my child was able to express himself, because we are doing the work together. And at 7 years old, he was able to say, "I felt trapped in the kitchen and I was trying to get out. And I'm sorry that I yelled at you. And I'm sorry I screamed. I lost my cool. And I didn't know how else to have you let me leave. So I yelled at you." And I was able to say how wrong I was to expect you to execute it perfectly, because I'm still working on executing it the way that I want as well. And so we talked about it for about 5-ish minutes, because that's about the limit that we both have now. And we hugged, and he said, "Can I still get my back rubbed tonight?" And it would be easier to withhold that, to feel like, "You don't deserve this. You treated me poorly." But that was his cry for connection, to reconnect with us. So I gave him the back rub, and he said, "Mom, can you just please sit with me for a little bit longer while I read my book?" He wasn't going to read out loud, but he just wanted my body next to his body, holding him, supporting him, comforting him, and getting back into connection. Now, 15 minutes earlier, he's screaming and yelling at me to get out of the bathroom. "I don't even want to be next to you," which I know isn't true. But that was his only way of communicating that he felt totally dysregulated. But 15 minutes later, after I've been able to apologize, after we've been able to understand what was happening with each other's bodies and each other's emotions in that moment, he desperately wanted connection.
I want to share my free guide to managing our kids' meltdowns. We know that meltdowns are normal, but they still suck and can be ridiculously triggering. This 4-step free guide will help you break the cycle of reactivity and help you get through the meltdown without snapping yourself. Don't join your kid in the tantrum. Grab my free guide and learn how to manage meltdowns like a pro. Head to responsableparenting.ck.page/meltdown, or just go and click the link in my show notes and get your guide today.
He fought for control. He realized it wasn't the right way. I realized it wasn't the right way for me. And we were able to get back into reconnection. Now, part of this process was recognizing the nervous system cues that I was experiencing in my body, my immediate anger. And anger is a protective mechanism. Anger is a defensive mechanism, because it protects us from more vulnerable feelings. And that vulnerable feeling that I was feeling was disrespected. I was feeling disrespected in the moment. And that's a very vulnerable feeling. So I lashed out in anger. Now he was feeling claustrophobic. He was feeling controlled. He was feeling like I wasn't giving him any space to express himself. So he lashed out. And now, because I've done the work, I recognized it way more quickly than I would have in the past. And I was able to use the tool. I grounded myself in the moment. I was able to calm down so that I could be more effective. I realized that we were both at the peak. So I gave us time. I separated us. I let him spend about 5 minutes by himself, calming down. And during that time, where my husband and I would have naturally yelled or gone to a defensive place of punishments and threats and all the stuff, I whispered to my husband, "Let's talk about it in a second. let's get through this and we'll talk about it afterwards. So we didn't escalate it past. We didn't hold on to that frustration and point it at our son being like, you are the reason we are responding like this. I took ownership of my dysregulation. And I told him in the future, this is one of my favorite parts of repair. It's not just saying I'm sorry and hoping that they say it's okay. One of my favorite parts of repair is then saying what I plan on doing differently in the future. And I said, when I feel disrespected like that in the future, I am going to squeeze my hands together and I'm going to stay silent and I'm going to tense the muscles in my body and then I'm going to release them. And I'm going to do that until I feel calmer so I can talk to you. I'm also going to give us space in those moments because I recognize that you actually need to feel like you have the freedom to leave the room. He actually said that. He goes, I didn't feel like I could freely move around the house. And that made me panic. So I gained a lot of valuable information about my son's coping strategies. He feels like he needs to be able to move. And suppressing that only exacerbates the situation. So we learned a lot from each other last night. And we woke up this morning with hugs, with reconnection. He spent a good amount of time going back to things that make him feel good, reading a graphic novel that really, he loves those. He feels like he can get through them quickly. He feels in control. And we were able to have a great morning. We were able to have a great night after what would have been a devastating fight. So I just want to realistically show you how this work progresses. It's not always perfect. We still get in arguments. We still get into power struggles. I still yell and I still fall back into older coping strategies that aren't effective. But I recognize them so much faster. And I'm starting to recognize in my son what his nervous system reactivity looks like. I'm starting to see his fight or flight strategies, and I'm starting to be able to work with him with those. So we've decided that today, when he gets home from school, we're going to actually practice what it looks like to feel trapped and what we can do instead. Instead of yelling, instead of lashing out, instead of screaming, what can we do? And so we're going to practice that and we're going to go through that today. And that is so much more effective for him because I said to him last night, you're going to feel this way a lot. You're going to feel this way in situations that you don't feel super comfortable. So we need to work on a skill. As opposed to punishing this out of you, we need to work on a skill. So that's what we're going to do today after school. We're going to figure out what feels best for him in the moment of if you feel panic, you feel trapped, you feel stressed, what can we do? And the only way this actually works in the heat of the moment is if we've practiced it outside of the heat of the moment. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be focusing on building skills. And that is a far more effective strategy than punishments. And so he felt more connected to us, knowing that we weren't going to lord a punishment over him because he had a bad moment. We all have bad moments. We all suck sometimes at communication. And when we're in a heightened state of emotion, our communication goes offline. That's just how our brain works. And so to recognize that and not try to punish that out of my child is what the work looks like in practice. So I just wanted to share this as a glimmer of hope that you recognize in yourself, like, oh, man, I do that too, but then I don't know what to do next, or I don't have that recovery process, or I don't know how to recognize these cues. That's what this work is. And if you're drawn to this, and if you're curious about what that looks like, I have a host of programs and resources for you. We can get really dialed in and do one-on-one work together where it is specifically you, where we dive into all of the triggers that you experience. And we build skills and systems around every single trigger for you to have just an incredible amount of skills and tools. Or if you're not ready to dive in at that high level, I have courses that help walk you through emotional regulation, where you would have 31 regulation tools at the end of the month, where you would know what to do when you feel this trigger. you have complete systems and strategies around that. I have those tools for you. I have courses to learn how to speak your strong-willed kid's language so that you can actually tune in and recognize what's happening in the moment as a bid for control from your strong-willed kid, and how to actually meet them at their level, as opposed to frantically reacting in the moment and trying to regain control any way you know how. And it comes out as a threat. It comes out as yelling. It comes out as a punishment. I have so many different workshops that teach you the language of regulation, where you get to learn communication strategies that are effective, where you get to learn the language of your child, their heart, where you get to understand their developmental age and stage so you can appropriately match it, as opposed to assuming they're a mini adult who already has this figured out. So whatever you need, I have a resource for you. I would highly encourage you to reach out, to connect, to send me an email, to just ask, what would you do? I'm such an open book. I am so on a mission to help so many more parents feel better in really challenging moments. And if you're stuck in that spot, let's connect, let's reach out, because there are so many ways that we can make this easier. It doesn't always have to be a white knuckle situation. So I look forward to talking to you. Thank you for always being here and letting me share my journey. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Response-Able Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method Branding and Podcasting.